Certifications, they don't guarantee your readiness. We cannot confuse completion of a training with transformation. Are we actually looking at some kind of capability gap being addressed at some point of time, or are we just treating the symptoms year after year? Training cannot end after the sessions complete. I would say that that's where the journey begins. Training doesn't happen because we want to learn. It happens because we must learn. So there is no more curiosity. I would not say that there is one playbook which we can follow to fix this, but yes, we have identified many different approaches.
Welcome to Mind the Gap, a podcast by Knowlathon, where we explore the gaps between learning, capability, and business reality. Organizations nowadays are investing heavily on certifications, training, and AI-powered learning tools. Yet, leaders across the industries continue to face the skill issues problem, skill shortages problem, and workforce-ready challenges issues. So, where is the disconnect? Today, I am joined by Abinash, who leads enterprise business at Knowlathon and works closely with organizations and clients on workforce development. Together, we'll explore why learning doesn't always translate into performance, why organizations are rethinking capability development, and how corporate learning could impact the future of professionals. Let's dive in. Good afternoon, Abinash sir. Welcome to Mind the Gap, Knowlathon podcast. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So we are going to talk about everything that L&D and everything and other things as well. So, every company nowadays say that people are their biggest asset. People as in the team and the employees are the biggest asset. But at the same time, the leaders keep talking about skill gaps, learning issues. Then the team members are not prepared enough to take on the new challenges and all. I want to know from you that why is this happening?
Okay. See, my take on this is nowadays, a lot of organizations that I've seen in my 10 odd years of experience working with different corporates. The change that we have seen, a good change that we have seen, is organizations now make quite a significant investment on the learning part, right? So the L&D teams, the learning part. However, that learning just becomes a learning activity, and that doesn't translate into what we call as capability building, right? So learning activity standalone just becomes something you focus towards the completion of things. However, how that translates into action is where the gap begins, right? So learning activity is increasing. We see a lot of different calendars being built, a lot of different modules getting covered. However, that learning should translate or should be aligned to the productivity increase in those employees, which again is aligned with the business KPIs, the business outcomes, right?
So what's business KPIs?
Sorry.
What is meant by business KPI?
Right. So why do an organization does a training, right? So eventually they want you to be more productive or more effective or take better decisions or take reduce the operational time in your work. So that translation in your work should happen, right? It shouldn't be we have a bunch of trainings. These 40 people are going to attend the training, 2 days of training, it's done, and everyone goes back to their old lives. So then what is the value of that? Why did that learning or the training even happen? Right? So that whatever they learned in those 2 days of training should be translated into their work. So that is where the biggest gap is there. The problems exist, which is a lot of people are trying to solve. However, it just gets out of hand, and no one. I mean, I think they have normalized it as that this is how it is. So training has to be done, some check boxes has to be ticked, and then we move on. However, that doesn't really give the actual ROI back to the organization of organizing those trainings for those employees. Companies, they need I think, competency building more than just learning being an isolated activity. That is what I believe, and we have seen it consistently across a lot of organizations. This problem statement usually comes up. Moreover, business nowadays, the requirements, the technologies that these businesses depend on, they are evolving at a very rapid pace as compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. So you every other week some new technologies are coming up. We are so much influenced by the introduction of AI into our work lives nowadays. But the learning development systems are still old. They are still functioning as they were maybe 10 years ago. So with this evolution, this rapid change in the industry needs, in the departmental needs of those employees, that learning development should also be at the same pace, because otherwise it just becomes again an isolated activity where you learn, you go to and you attend a training, you learn and you come back. However, once you are back, you just go back to your old ways of doing your work. There is no real translation which is visible in that sense, right? A huge impact of AI and digital transformations is what we are looking at right now. And even on that, if you think from that perspective, those AI initiatives should happen. We ourselves do a lot of trainings for a range of corporates nowadays which are into Gen AI adoption. A huge demand is there. However, what is happening after that? Did the training was done, and did your employees at least bring in 2 new AI initiatives? Did they think of approaching a problem differently? If it is a technical organization, have they used AI to reduce the overall, or increase the efficiency maybe, or reduce the overall timeline that a project takes? So whether there is any impact on the project delivery from that training on AI that they took. So these are the things that has to be a part of the training itself. So training cannot be an isolated 1 day, 2 day training. If organizations, or if the participant himself or herself wants the productivity coming out of the training, then it has to be over a period of maybe a couple of months. It has to be a proper intervention, and that is where we can actually say that, okay, there has been some impact, and that impact has been measured, and eventually the training has been fruitful. So eventually that is, I think, what training should look like.
So most companies nowadays have training calendars, like what all training has to be done. And there are people who attend workshops as well. There are employees who undergo few certifications which enhance their on-job qualifications and other things, or their profile also.
Yeah.
But there are some leaders that they still say that there is something not right, or nothing really has changed even after doing all of this. So I want to know from you, like, why does this particular thing happen even after doing all those things?
Right. See, what I would say here is, we cannot confuse completion of a training with transformation. Things that I've already said in my last answer. So nowadays we just see what are the completion metrics. So it's very easy to identify. So what do you see when you want to see your training completion? You have identified the need, or maybe you received the need from the business that these many employees need the training. So you do the training, you see how many of those participants attended the training, you just take the attendance, and that's, I think, pretty much it in 90% of the cases that is happening today, right? So that doesn't really mean that the actual transformation or capability building has happened. So take example of, do you drive?
Two-wheeler, yes.
Okay, all right. So you might have taken a driving license test, I hope, right? Okay, right. So when you have taken the test and you pass the test, does that mean that you absolutely can go on any road and drive? No, right? So don't do that if you do that. But yeah, so passing that test or just attending that exam in for that driving license and getting the license doesn't really mean you can confidently drive. Similarly, just attending a training doesn't really impact the influence of that training into your workflows or your current work. So that is one of the biggest change that should happen in the industry today. And those metrics, like let me take a very contextual example for this. A project management training has happened, right? And so someone who has attended that might have understood or might have learned what stakeholder management is, but that will only make sense if they are able to change their techniques, use those stakeholder management techniques, and when they are in a real business scenario with their stakeholders and their clients, that at that point of time that training has to bring in value for that particular individual, and only then we can say that that particular training has actually given some outcomes. Secondly, what I feel is certifications, they don't guarantee your readiness. So certifications might show that you have acquired the knowledge, you have the commitment for it, but again, they are only a piece of maybe paper or nowadays digital copies, unless that creates a real impact in your day-to-day work. So the practical, how you handle your work or how much you have benefited in implementing those new things that you have learned in that training, and the implementation, the level of implementation, the quantity of implementation that you have done from those trainings are finally what actually will actually give ROI back for that particular engagement that has been done. Coming to the metrics part that I was talking about. So like I said, learning metrics are very easy to identify. You can just calculate what was the attendance of a particular training, how many people attended, how many modules were covered, how many days the training went. But the real metrics that are harder to actually measure but actually matter is what kind of impact did that bring in the overall strategy development maybe of those employees, how many new initiatives have started after that training, which actually translates or which actually makes sense in that particular department or project that they are working on. These are the metrics that are very difficult to measure for organizations, and that's why actually a lot of organizations don't do that, or a lot of L&D teams actually ignore that. However, that should actually be the points to define whether the training gave any benefit, or whether they should plan more trainings based on that, or maybe it can be for more people, right? To sum this up, what I would say is a real change matters with what has been executed and not what the training was about.
I have understood everything that has been discussed so far. That, okay, I understand training, certification, workshops, webinars, they all are important, but if it is not going to create any on-ground impact to the employees or in the company or the work that has been allotted to the people, then there is no use of spending money and organizing these workshops and everything. So basically, now I want to talk to you that on the ground everything looks healthy and everything, that certifications, workshops are happening, but underneath there is something that will definitely be not right, or something that would go against what has been planned. I want to know from you that what are the warning signs to recognize or identify these things.
Okay. See, one of the earliest and important warning signs is we have to see whether the same trainings whether they are getting repeated year after year. So last year you did the same trainings, most of the trainings, and this year again you are repeating the trainings. So I mean, are we actually looking at some kind of capability gap being addressed at some point of time, or are we just treating the symptoms year after year? So there is a difference in this, right? So this is, I think, where we have to the organizations need to see that it shouldn't be a same repetitive thing over and over again. It should be, at some point it should be the learning just cannot stay consumed, rather it should be absorbed at some point of time. So one of the I would say that this repetition of the same trainings over year and year again definitely is a warning sign. The second thing that I want to talk about is the engagement. So we see a lot of participants uh, attending those trainings. They are excited. Immediately, you receive good feedback from those trainings. So they come out with new knowledge, with or very good rigor. They have new enthusiasm. However, once they are out of that training, they go back to their old ways. So that again is one of the warning signs that we should definitely look. Another point I would say is managers, the immediate managers of those participants, they usually keep reporting the same capability gaps even after some kind of learning interventions has happened. For example, even in our daily work, in my own daily work, when we meet stakeholders of different organizations for some kind of learning interventions that they have planned, we don't see a lot of immediate business unit managers who are maybe the immediate managers for those 10-15 participants that they are planning for this particular training. They don't I have not seen them being an active part of those pre-training plannings and discussions. And eventually, when the training has been done and delivered, then the managers don't see any fundamental development that's happening after the training. One last thing that comes to mind is that learning cannot become compliance driven. So nowadays what happens is training doesn't happen because we want to learn. It happens because we must learn.
So there is a requirement.
Yes. So you see the difference, right? So there is no more curiosity. There is no space left for that. It's just that I'm asked to attend this training and I have to finish before this quarter. So it shouldn't be. The whole idea of the motivation that has to come into a participant of those trainings dies there. So it shouldn't be like I said initially, it shouldn't be a checkbox that I have done with this training for this quarter and I have to go and do this training for the next quarter. No, it should be something which actually is very much from my likeness, or from where I feel that okay, this is the training that I should do and this should be interesting, and that's when I think that the actual translation will happen. So pretty much these are the warning signs that we definitely should keep an eye on.
So technically there are 3 warning signs. Or probably there might be more.
Maybe many more. These 3 come to mind right away.
Now, basically I want to know is, most organizations think that if they provide enough learning content, their employees will get better. So is this a reality or is this a myth?
Yeah, very true. Many organizations nowadays feel, they pack up a lot of resources. They provide access to a lot of different courses and certifications to their employees, and they think that if the content is huge, if they have a lot of resources, they think that automatically the training or the learning will follow, which is not true. So having access to a lot of learning tools, LMS platforms, doesn't really mean that learning is happening or some kind of transformation is happening. Definitely we have to look not into the volume of the content, rather we have to look at the context. So let me tell you, one particular training, right, might be extremely interesting and very much would make sense to one employee, and the same training might be completely irrelevant to another. Right? So what I feel is learning should be extremely personalized for that particular target employee, right? It cannot be generic, else it creates a huge gap between how the participants perceive these trainings. This learning overloading of a lot of learning resources often ends up not bringing the impact that why those kind of resources were provided. Instead, it kind of creates confusion of what actually will help the participant in actually making them better in their current role, right? Having access to these resources is not equal to effectiveness. Access opens doors for opportunity, for sure, right? So if you have access to a lot of resources, at least you have the opportunity to learn and improve. However, thinking that providing access is making you effective is a very is a myth, I would say. So it can only be translated into effectiveness when we have to take care that those learnings are consumed and absorbed effectively by those participants, and that eventually would give you the initial impact that was maybe idolized as the objective of that particular intervention, right?
First thing that I understood is we do not have to overload the certifications and everything for every employee. And second thing I understood, I might be wrong, correct me here, that we should have to keep personalized certifications for every employee.
Yes, obviously. So I mean, it's difficult to achieve if you are an organization with 10,000 plus employees. How will you create personalized learning journeys for each individual, right? However, when we do it usually you don't plan trainings for 10,000 people at once. Even if if you have 10,000 people in the calendar year, you plan it for maybe 50 or 100 participants or 100 employees at once. And that is where the focus of that particular planning of the intervention should definitely be towards the how contextual or how personalized that particular module is for that target employee, and that employee should immediately relate to that training with what they do in their day-to-day work. So that context should be there, and that is way more important than having a lot of content.
So I have seen teams go through training, the feedback scores are good and everyone seems happy about it, but few months down the line the results are the same like they were previously. I want to know how common this particular thing is.
I would say it's pretty common. It's very common. Like I said, a lot of learning interventions take place nowadays. Everything goes well. There is very good feedback. When we receive a lot, I mean, I would say 99% good feedback as compared to some criticism coming from the participants. However, once that's done, and after a few months, the organization finds that very little has changed, or there is no change at all. So I would say that this is still one of the lingering problems that exists in this whole training life cycle with organizations today.
I mean, is there any solution to curb this problem?
See, there is no one. I would not say that there is one, playbook which we can follow to fix this. But yes, we have identified many different approaches towards, increasing the effectiveness of trainings. We have come up with. I would say we have evolved from a very basic. Another training provider, and now we like to assist our clients with a much more strategic and transformative learning interventions. So we are doing a few things which we can definitely maybe some other day we will talk about those things, right? But yes, this definitely should happen more in the education industry, at least. That is targeting organizations for their development, for their employee, productivity increments. So for those kind of things, we definitely, this is coming back to your question. This is the problems is seen everywhere. It's very common. One more thing I would add here is, if you remember, I maybe talked in the first, section that we were talking about. The reinforcement after training is something which definitely has to be there. Training cannot end after the sessions complete. I would say that that's where the journey begins. So that is where actually training or the learning starts. We have to monitor how, or what changes, what behavioral changes, what improvements, what are the outcomes, or how well those participants have been able to utilize the learnings of the trainings in their regular working or workflows. So that is something and then there has to be some kind of reinforcement sessions over what has been missed. What if we don't find any change, then it has to be addressed immediately rather than just doing another training a year later. That doesn't make any sense. That will not give any kind of value to this overall engagement. Maybe the influence of this might not be as much as the other things, but yes, the new things, when someone comes out of a training with learning some new things, so those kind of innovations, the new things that they want to do and experimentations should also be encouraged. So if, let's say, the organization culture is like, if it rewards someone who were following the old ways, then the new things will not get the scope of coming into the bigger picture, or that translation that we are looking for in the capability or competency building from these learning interventions. Those will be completely invisible, and immediately the overall impact will take a backseat. So definitely I would say that this is extremely visible, and things has to change.
So, for professionals of some organizations who are involved in planning and learning and of other of things and all, and those who are listening to the podcast, what is the biggest mindset shift they need to make about in 2026?
Okay, all right. I'll keep it brief. The first thing I would say is, don't follow every trend. Nowadays, we see a lot of trends. Don't jump into everything. Do your analysis, see what keeps you relevant, see what keeps you future ready, and then take over those skills. Maybe don't try to learn everything. Second, I would say, is build adaptability as opposed to building credentials or certifications. So that adaptability will keep you relevant in the market. It will help you get into the next bigger roles, will help you be more cross-functional across your role. So those things will matter more rather than how many different certifications or credentials you have. The third thing that I would say is focus on capability. How you are helping the organization back, or what it might be anything, with a business impact or a revenue impact, or something where you are saving costs, whatever it is. There are many things that the organizations are looking forward to. So see what capability you bring onto that table. Fourth point I would say is learn with purpose of execution. Don't learn just for learning, or don't learn just to add another title or another, like I said, credential. Use those learnings and learn only those things which will actually help you be more productive, or it's, in some places, it can make your efforts less as well, and you achieve more, and that is what we call being more effective. I would say, think long term. Think nowadays it's all about being future ready. So think 2-3 years down the road, and what exactly the entire blueprint should be planned, that where you should go in the next couple of years. So, and then the implementation should start. So the planning is very important for that. And the last point that I'd add is, think about where this particular intervention or training will take you, both from an individual level as well as from an organizational point of view. So I think these few things are not very super complex, but in the long run, it will definitely build a secured and more productive future for both the professionals as well as the organizations.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast, Abinash sir. It was good hosting you, and as for someone who is not directly related to L&D, getting to learn something about L&D is a very important and big thing, because I just thought to know how L&D function, what is the real importance of certifications, apart from just learning how we should make utmost use of it. So thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And yeah,
Sure. Thank you, Kunal.
thank you, Abinash, for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you to everyone for tuning into Mind the Gap by Knowlathon. Remember, learning is important, but capability is what creates impact. See you in the next episode. Make sure you subscribe to Knowlathon YouTube channel. Until then, keep bridging the gap.